Alright, here we go. Mandalorian analysis and review, The Marshal. That was a blast! That was the longest episode of the show ever, but it really didn't feel like it. From start to finish, I was absolutely hooked, and just under an hour blew by. It finally feels like I'm truly happy with Disney's acquisition of Star Wars, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I wasn't too keen on the new trilogy or the spin-off movies. Mandalorian, however, came along and said, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Please look at my Western-inspired action series for redemption." When I watch Mandalorian, I can more easily forget about episodes 7, 8, and 9. I'm itching with excitement to talk about this new episode, because this is basically my new favourite TV show. I highly recommend you go and watch the series and the new episode if you haven't done so already, because we're going to be dissecting every nook and cranny this episode provided us with. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button, because I'm going to be making this a weekly gig whilst also producing Doctor Who reviews. So, without further ado, let's get on with the review. I was honestly thinking that they'd be jumping straight into finding Baby Yoda's kin. This was where Season 1 left us after all, but instead they said, "Hey, enjoy this giant sand dragon instead." The episode begins with Mando and the child wandering along a familiar path. This is no Coruscant skyscraper, city in the sky, or palace of Naboo. We're seeing the underbelly of society, ridden with graffiti of 3PO? This is galactic society left in the dark after the Empire's lights went out. The same idea is presented more bluntly in Cobb Vanth's flashback when the town gets taken over by the mining collective. Even Peli Motto complains that there's no authority to complain to anymore. Without any words, this scene sets the stage for the show. A gentle reminder of the time and setting this era of Star Wars takes place within, and the chaos that reigns supreme in the galaxy. The Mandalorian is here to see Gor Koresh, a thug that rigs his own competitions. He's certainly giving off a Jabba the Hutt vibe with his ugliness, Twi'lek bouncer, and 2 Gamorrean fighters in the ring. You have to think that with the downfall of Jabba's criminal empire, these people are going to be out of work, and despite the Empire's downfall, things haven't really changed for the better. At first, I thought this one-eyed creature was voiced by Willem Dafoe, but it's actually somebody else from the movie Chef, also directed by Jon Favreau. After being cornered, the episode reminds us of Mando's fighting abilities, still happy to be outnumbered and finishing off these blokes with style. After catching up with Gor, Mando is pointed to Tatooine.
I've spent much time on Tatooine.
The scene rounds itself off perfectly though when Mando has Gor hung on a street lamp. I mentioned a minute ago about the Empire's lights being turned off. This dog-eat-dog world is most clearly presented here as Mando shoots the light out, leaving the unseen red-eyed monsters to feast on Gor's corpse. It also reminds us of Mando's affinity for creatures, animals, and beasts, which I felt was an idea left a little undercooked by the end of Season 1. Thankfully, this idea resonated wholly throughout this episode. Mando returns to Tatooine for a brief visit with Peli Motto, where Amy Sedaris once again nails this humorous mechanic character. Even though the visit is brief, it's good that the show is sticking to its pre-established world from earlier episodes. Seeing Mando communicating with Tusken Raiders vocally now as well as in sign language was a fantastic expansion from the pre-established comedy. Accompanied by these broad establishing shots scattered continuously throughout, it's clear the show has expanded its scale as well as its story. It's unsurprising with the roaring success of this show and the Disney Plus platform itself. Mando arrives in Mos Pelgo with the Marshal wearing Boba Fett's armor. This was quite the shocker considering that character was left rather digested in Return of the Jedi. However, the big shocker came when the guy pulled off his helmet. From the moment this poignant close-up shot is placed in front of us, it's clear that this guy isn't a Mandalorian. This shootout that never happened is as Western-inspired as this show gets, but the pair are saved by the bell, or in this case, the krayt dragon. I found it quite interesting that they called it a dragon considering it doesn't have the appearance of the mythological type, but simultaneously its gargantuan size makes calling it a serpent or a basilisk downright laughable. I genuinely gasped at the initial bantha being swallowed whole. It's part of that expansion I keep running on about. You think about how large and menacing these creatures appear to be in A New Hope, and then to witness that majesty being devoured like that that was just incredible. You even get this daunting feeling when they reach the cave.
There's no such thing as an abandoned Sarlacc pit.
There is if you eat the Sarlacc.
Whoa. Despite the ruthless and annoying depiction of the Jawas we saw in the previous series, I was intrigued to see the Jawas acting in a far more honourable fashion when treating Cobb in the flashback. When he returns to Mos Pelgo all armoured up, he too can withstand the odds that a Mandalorian would be comfortable taking on. Both characters have more in common than we think, which makes their pairing that much more interesting. Although his pod racer speeder is rather questionable, admittedly I did have a good chuckle at that.
What a piece of junk!
The pair meet up with a group of Tusken Raiders. It's here that the helping out Mando was made for pays off as he calms a freaky doggo and prevents conflicts between the Raiders and Cobb. The Tusken Raiders are no longer these two-dimensional bad guys, but actually have their own interests and traditions. By humanizing them, there are now stakes, and we care that little bit more whether they live or die. Now that the latter option could be a reality with the dragon thrown into the mix, the banding together of these two factions against a chaotic force of nature makes for a truly satisfying story. I don't know if this was done for accuracy or flavour, but I swear Mando's flamethrower has a lion roar sound effect placed underneath it. The Raiders then allow us to more easily conceptualize the size of this beast. This moment is great because it exposes the doubtfulness instilled in the human condition. This is exactly what we see afterwards when the pair return to Mos Pelgo with the bad news that everybody's gotta help out when dealing with this dragon. It's either do or die and make peace with the Raiders. Even cooler was how Mando made a rather impressive addition to the speech. Thinking back to episode 4 last year when he had to get Cara Dune to do all the talking to another village, he's evidently progressed in his persuasion skills. I was getting a kind of Game of Thrones vibe when the Raiders arrived with all their banthas, considering the characters in that show too had to put aside their past grievances with one another in the aid of survival. I don't know what desert they filmed all these vast dunes in, but my god, these establishing shots look so good. The music also builds up the tension as they slowly arrived at the cave, which in itself looked like a gaping mouth. The quiet sounds of dust being carried by the wind, the low rumble of a slumbering giant, the tension was killing me. Then to see the black bars disappear for this golden IMAX section just blew my mind. I was not expecting this change at all, and suddenly what would have been an amazing encounter anyway became the ultimate encounter. Not only does the creature look so damn realistic, but the peaks and troughs of tension that occur are just sublime. You have everything taking place on the ground, then after the first explosion, the jetpacks get utilized, and suddenly it turns from a two-dimensional battle to a three-dimensional battle. Even the dragon vomiting was so uniquely disgusting. My mind was going in so many directions. Is Mando going to have to claw his way out of the belly of the beast? Then I saw the harpoons and thought better of it. Then they turned it around again with Mando getting eaten. We've all seen enough movies and TV shows to know he's going to make it out just fine, which he does in spectacular style. These two post-battle aerial shots are just something to behold. To punctuate the remainder of the scene, the Raiders celebrate in finding what I wrongly assumed was a dragon egg. Maybe I just prefer the idea of a bunch of Tusken Raiders growing their own dragon and conquering Tatooine. Apparently it's a pearl, but I still couldn't help but think of the Jawas from last season. There's a mystery man at the end. For those of you that don't know, this is Temuera Morrison, who previously played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones. It's fairly clear that this guy is going to be playing Boba Fett, apparently surviving the Sarlacc pit. After what we've just witnessed Mando doing, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to suggest that Boba himself survived the gut of the Sarlacc. Thanks for watching. I think this is probably my new favourite episode of The Mandalorian thus far. What did you think of this episode? Comment below your thoughts or join us for a chinwag on my Discord server, where we'll continue this discussion.